Delighted to be here tonight with you all to chat about what is one of my favourite bird species, the swift, an incredible little bird. And I've had the pleasure of working on these with Ricky for a number of years. So today we're going to chat about the fascinating, I suppose, life cycle of the swift, which I will cover. Also talking about some of the fascinating facts of the birds, and also a bit about the work that is going on to try and protect these species across the country, which Ricky will talk about halfway through. So I'll be chatting to you for about the next 20 minutes on that and then passing over to Ricky. So what is the swift and why do we care about them, or why are we bothered about conserving them? So first off, as I say, it's a fascinating little species. It's a migrant bird that comes into Ireland every year from Africa. And just like clockwork, you can nearly set your calendar to it that around about the first week of May, we'll start to see the first birds arriving in. And they're here for just a short few months every year, heading off in August after the finished breeding. So as you can see from the photo of the swift here, they're bigger than the swallows and the martins. They're lovely chocolate brown, but when you see them against the sky, as in this case here, they appear very dark. They pretty much appear black against the sky. And they feed on insects, so they very much live life on the wing, and we're going to chat a bit more about that in a few minutes. But why are we concerned about swifts, and why do people care about them? Well, first off, they really are a fascinating species, and I'm going to go into some of the incredible facts about swifts that kind of sets them apart from a lot of our other birds. But another reason why I think we're so interested in swifts is the fact that they very much live amongst us. So we call them an urban bird because they live in our villages, our towns, and our cities across Ireland, nesting in our homes or in our offices, in our churches, in our heritage sites. So they very much live amongst us. And one of the benefits of that is it makes it somewhat easier for us to help a species like the swift, the fact that they live in our buildings, because although that is part of the problem, which again we'll chat about in a few minutes, it's also part of the solution. It means we can do something to help them. But finally, the reason why we care about them is because they're in trouble. They're actually in serious trouble, and the numbers have declined really significantly. And I think we really want to help them, and I think others want to do the same. But just to set them apart from the other species that you might confuse them with, so you can see up on the top left, I'll just get the pointer. The swift here, so as we saw in the earlier photo, appeared black against the sky, large wings, sickle-shaped wings, but it flies incredibly fast. That's one of the most notable things about them, is the speed at which it flies. We then have the house martin, which is a slightly smaller bird, and one of the most distinctive features of the house martin is this white rump that we can see here, and a slightly relatively small forked tail. One of the other ways we can tell these birds apart is by the nest, and in relation to the house martin, you can see here the house martin builds the dome nest, often in the apex of the house, up in the corner, a dome mud nest, and you see often the feeding the young, they're poking their heads out just from the small entrance at the top of that. We then have the swallow, which is the more typical forked tail, inky blue hood with the distinctive red chin. And the swallow's nest is the distinctive cup nest that you often see in porches or maybe in barns or sheds. And again, made out of mud and the likes of straw. And then finally, we have the other martin, which is the sand martin. And they have quite a stumpy little forked tail and a distinctive brown chest bar, short little wings. And they are one of the first migrants to arrive into Ireland each year. We normally would expect them around about St. Patrick's Day, the first arrive. You see them around rivers and lakes and water bodies. And again, these birds burrow into sandbanks, sometimes also in old buildings that you find along rivers, you occasionally find them in. But one of the distinctive features here is in relation to the swift, which nests in under the eaves of buildings, you don't actually see the nest. So if you can see the nest or the nest entrance, in the case of the burrow of the sand martin, you know that it's not a swift. So where are they coming from? Where do they spend the winter? Well, as I mentioned, they're migration into Ireland from sub-Saharan Africa. So you can see the blue here is where they spend the winter feeding up. The Congo Basin is a particularly important feeding site. And then come the breeding season, they'll start to move, trying to get back to the breeding grounds from late April into May. And we can see on the western extreme here of the range, we have Ireland, but the range moves right across in the north up as far as Russia, and in the east out as far as Mongolia and China. So they do have quite an extensive range. But there are a few fascinating facts about the swifts. And the first that I'm going to mention, the first of three, is the fact that of all our bird species, they very much live life in the air. So when the young birds leave the nest, they may not touch down again for many months, possibly even up to a year. So really, there's no other species that can touch it in this regard. So they feed on the wing. They take water, either rain droplets from the sky or go over water bodies. It's incredible at this time of year to watch. For example, I live in Banagher in County Offaly on the Shannon, and you stand on the bridge in the town looking at the Shannon, you often see swifts skimming over the surface of the water, just taking droplets of water from it. Incredible to see. The birds also mate on the wing, but the incredible fact is, instead of going to roost at night in boxes in trees or in buildings, the young birds actually fly up high into the sky, and they just switch off half the brain and they roost up in the sky. So they literally live life on the air. They do not touch down. It's quite a feat. So in relation to the nesting of these birds, the nest often in colonies or loose colonies. So sometimes you get big numbers in a building, you could have 30 or 40, but more often you have these slightly more spread out colonies that in a town or in a village, you might have one or two in a house, and then next door you might have another one or two, and you've got loose colonies such as this. It's important to note that they're site faithful. So they're coming back to the exact same spots every year. And this is one of the problems, because when we lose the nests, it's hard to get them back because they're so site faithful that if that nest site is lost, they're different to other species like robins or wrens or blue tits. If they lose a nest site, they'll often go and find another suitable nest site very easily within the same breeding season and go again. That's not the case with the swifts. They also pair for life, but they won't breed until they're about 4 or 5 years of age. So again, another important note there. So in relation to the birds being site faithful, this is a photo of a nest box on a house in Northern Ireland. It's a guy called Brian Caffrey Ricky Whelan, who is one of the founders of the Northern Ireland Swift Group, who do tremendous work up in the north and indeed have taught us in BirdWatch Ireland, many of us, what we know about swifts. But I remember going up to visit Brian, and he really drilled home to me how site faithful these birds are. So you can see this is one of his homemade boxes, and you can see each of the entrance holes is a different, it's a different chamber essentially, but there's a little shutter. And what Brian does is during the winter, he closes all the shutters to keep the worst of the winter weather out. And then come April time, he'll open them all up so that when the swifts arrive back in the first week of May, they can go straight back into their nest sites. And one year he told me a story that he saw a swift outside and it was acting kind of unusual. He thought there was something up, and he went out and looked out the box, and he realized that he hadn't opened one of the shutters or it had fallen and gone over the hole, and the bird couldn't get in. But there was an entrance a foot to the left and a foot to the right, and both of those nests were empty at the time, but the swift wouldn't go into them because the swift knew the entrance it wanted to get into, that was its site, that was its nest site. And Brian copped it, went up, opens the shutter, and within minutes, the bird was back in its nest. But that's how incredibly site faithful these birds are. So as I mentioned, the swift is in trouble, and one of our bird surveys is called the Countryside Bird Survey that monitors different squares across the country each year. And over the last 20 years, the data on that has shown us a decline of almost 60% in swift numbers. And relatively recently, we also carried out a national survey called the Bird Atlas, which maps all of our bird species across the whole of Britain and Ireland. And that showed us a really alarming decline that both in Britain and Ireland, our swift numbers were really starting to drop. And I think it was on the round about this period that some action started for them, because we started to understand they really were in dire trouble. And more recently, in the last few months, based on the decline seen in the countryside bird survey, the swift has actually been added to what we call the red list on the birds of conservation concern. So the red list is those species of bird in Ireland that are most threatened or most endangered, have declined by over 50% during a certain period. So the swift now, unfortunately, is on the same list as the likes of the curlew, the corncrake, and the barn owl, species that we have seen huge declines on in recent years. So it is a bird that's in trouble and really warrants our help. So why has the swift declined? Well, there's a number of factors at play. And as I mentioned, the Bird Atlas was carried out, and an alarming pattern that started to emerge from, but for the whole group of species that migrate from sub-Saharan Africa up to us each year to breed, so the likes of swifts, swallows, martins, cuckoos, warblers, a whole host of species, we started to see this reoccurring trend where the line for each species might have been at a slightly different level, but essentially to the south of the line was grey and to the northwest of it was red. And the grey represents declining numbers and the red represents increasing numbers. So we started to see this pattern whereby a lot of those sub-Saharan migrants appeared to be shifting the range to the northwest. And that was a concern for us. And we think this is primarily driven by climate change. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. But as I mentioned earlier, swifts nest mainly in our buildings. And anybody who's built a house or knows anyone who's built a house in the past 10 or 15 years knows that our building techniques nowadays are far greater than they were 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. Our houses are now pretty much sealed buildings, and there's not any space or room in those for the likes of swifts to access in under the roof. So we've essentially locked them out of new builds. Another problem is in our old buildings where swifts are actively nesting and do have colonies, they're often renovated, or conservation work takes place in old buildings such as churches and other heritage sites such as castles and round towers. But during that building work or renovation work or conservation work, we can often block out the swifts by replastering, repointing areas, fixing up the roofs. So during that reconstruction work, we can often do great damage to swifts. But another factor we would imagine is we have seen a huge decline in insect populations. So we've seen in a recent survey carried out in Germany, a really alarming decline over a 25-year period at a number of survey sites where sample plots were surveyed for insect populations in Germany, recorded a decline of up to 76% in insect populations in Germany, which really set the alarm bells ringing for anybody working in the sector. And recent data coming out from the likes of the National Biodiversity Data Centre, who are doing work on insects and butterflies, are also showing declines in these species in Ireland. And as aerial insect eaters, the swifts, obviously, if there's a lack of that food or a decline in that food, one can assume it probably is also having an impact. So there really are a number of factors leading to the declines. However, there is hope, and there is great work being done across the country to try and stem these declines. So BirdWatch Ireland have been doing great work. Ricky's going to fill you in on more about that. But other groups such as Swift Conservation Ireland, the Northern Ireland Swift Group, great work in Dublin by the Dublin Swift Conservation Group, and also the RSPB in Northern Ireland. They've all been doing their best in recent years to try to get to grips with the problems and to do some survey work to understand where the birds are and put in place protective measures to try and protect the colonies. So what do we need to do? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to try and get a handle and understand what is exactly causing the issues in Ireland. Where are the birds? Where are the colonies? Because we need to know where they are in order to protect them. And once we find out, do the survey work and research work to answer these questions, the most important thing is to protect the existing nest sites. So once we pin down where a colony is, it's key that we protect that colony into the future. We can also put in place Practical conservation measures such as nest boxes can be erected for the species to try and help them. And climate change is an issue, so we can all play our part. And I think we all know what we can do in relation to that to try and halt climate change. But again, in relation to the practical conservation measures, Ricky is going to fill us in a lot more on that in a few minutes. So in recent years, we've been doing a lot of work. We've been carrying out county swift surveys. We've been producing really good guidelines and information to people, to community groups and what they can do. We've been erecting nest boxes in certain places and doing a lot of education and outreach work. So as I mentioned, the county swift surveys, we have carried out these starting back in about 2016. The first one took place in County Offaly, and it basically involved carrying out detailed swift surveys in every town and village in the county to try and pin down where the swifts were and to map those so that we had an active register, if you like, of all the existing active colonies in the county. We then looked to work with the local community through the likes of tidy towns groups, main sheds and other community groups and residents to try and get buy-in, because we really need the local buy-in. That is really essential, is that people on the ground become the swift champions, looking out and doing their bit to try and protect them. And then on the back of this work, we try to get established local projects in town and villages across each of these counties to try and protect the birds at local level. And we saw really good uptake and success on the back of many of these county projects. More recently, Ricky's produced a fantastic guide called Saving Swifts, which has really got everything that you need to know about swifts in one place. So all about how you survey them, how you protect existing colonies, how to make boxes if you want to buy them, where you can buy them, how and where to put them up. So everything that you need to know about swifts is all on the Saving Swift guide, which can be downloaded on the BirdWatch Ireland website free of charge. We've also quite recently brought together all the experts to the first Irish Swift conference in Athlone back in 2020, just before COVID struck. We all came together, so trying to bring together experts that we could share knowledge, understand what the issues are, and trying our best to work together to do our best for swift conservation in Ireland. We have also been doing great work with the OPW across Ireland for about 6 or 7 years now. Each season, we survey 4 different heritage sites around the country to try and find swifts at the heritage sites. And if we do, we then prepare management guidelines for the OPW to try and protect those birds. So when they're found, we produce really detailed locations of nest sites and information so that those birds can be protected as part of the conservation plan for each of those sites. One of my favorite of these was at Clonmacnoise. Some of you might have been there, familiar with the site, but we surveyed Clonmacnoise and we could see one pair, and we surveyed for days and we couldn't find where they were. And eventually you might see this small red circle. So many of you will know swifts nest pretty high up in buildings. So the reason we couldn't see them is because our eyes were up at the top of the round tower looking for the swifts. But incredibly, they had chosen to nest rather, just 3.5 foot off the ground. You can see the site manager here, Tom, having a peek in, listening to the chicks they were nesting. So it's the lowest nest that we know of in the whole of Britain and Ireland, but was an incredible find to find them so low. So my last fact is, and this is something you can certainly look out for at the minute, is the term bangers. And these are the young non-breeding birds. And the reason we call them bangers, so as I mentioned, swifts don't nest till they're about 4 or 5 years of age. So when the young birds, the 2 and 3 year olds, arrive back to Ireland each year, their sole purpose is to try and find a suitable nest site for them to breed in when they're of age. So to do that, what they do is they form these parties of often 5, 6, 7 birds like here. They fly around with the sole purpose of trying to find a nest site. And in doing so, what they do is they fly up and they literally bang off a building. So if they see a suitable crevice in a building, they'll fly up, screech, bang off it to try and provoke a reaction from inside. If there's a nesting pair inside, they will generally scream back from the nest site at the banger to say, sorry, no room here, in is full, and the banger will keep going until he finds a suitable nest site. But that's why they're called that. I think it's a great name, but they're very mobile and noticeable at the moment. So if you see a screaming party of swifts at the minute, that's probably what they are, these non-breeding birds. So that is my bit, and I'll pass over now to Ricky. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Now, Andrew or Brian, can you confirm if that's up?
Yeah.
Yes, Ricky.
Perfect, thanks. Hi, everyone. So my name is Ricky Whelan, and I coordinate a lot of the Swift work that BirdWatch Ireland do, and currently coordinating 3 county Swift surveys in Dublin City, in Kilkenny, and in Waterford, East Waterford at the minute. So busy time of year, and it's good, but glad to be here to talk to you. So a big part of what we do is hitting them behind the scenes as well. So it's getting the message out there. It's doing this sort of thing, talking to people, encouraging people to look out for swifts, to protect their local colonies, to get up boxes on their own homes and elsewhere. So just a couple of examples of that there. There's you see the top left image is just an article I wrote for the Irish Wildlife Trust magazine, who you'll be familiar with as a charity, and it's good. That goes out to every one of their members. So and obviously they have skin in the game and want to protect wildlife as well. So it's a really good opportunity for us to get the message out to people we know will probably pick up the magazine and answer that call to action. So that's really good stuff. That's stuff we can react to and do all the time. This image on the right hand side is a guy I met from Chaz, which is a housing agency for older people. And they came to us looking for opportunities to get involved to help swifts, because they have a whole network of buildings, mostly around Dublin, but also in Limerick and Cork as well. So that was low-hanging fruit for us. That was a really easy one. We could advise exactly where to put the swift nest boxes, that they would be safe, good access for the swifts, but also, I suppose, some payback for the residents as well, so they can enjoy and be part of the projects as well. So it's really good when those opportunities turn up, and we work with various property management companies and stuff to do that as well. A lot of nest boxes have gone up in the last couple of years through collaborative work with big companies and big housing bodies like that. The bottom left is typical meeting with local authority planners and engineers, and they are the people in there that you need to get to if you want to protect these sites, because through the planning process, once we know where the sites, the nesting colonies are in each county, through our county Swift surveys and through collecting citizen science data through the National Biodiversity Data Centre and through our own asks, it allows us then to map and pinpoint exactly to the local authority where these colonies are and where they must be protected. So, for example, if a planning application lands on a planner's desk to take the roof off the old church, and they know for a fact there's a swift colony in there, they can then put in planning stipulations that the work must happen outside of the swift nesting season. They must ensure that the swift access for swifts is retained, etc., etc. So that's a really effective way of protecting swifts, and we do an awful lot of that. And then there's interventions as well. So the bottom right is a church, Donegal Town, the Church of the Four Masters, or St. Patrick's Church. Just this season, a local swift enthusiast rang us up, and he was alarmed because scaffolding had gone up and guys were at work on the roof, and he knew there was swifts nesting in the roof space, and he was worried they would be put out. So he was right to worry. We got in touch with the National Parks and Wildlife Service, who got in touch with the local parish council, who were able to put us in touch with the architect who was on the job. And we managed to encourage them, using, I suppose, the carrot approach rather than the stick, to halt what we're doing until we did a full swift survey of the building, so we could further advise them on what to do and how to work around the swift. So it turned out there was 15 active nest sites, and only one was actually affected by the current scaffolding. So we worked out a plan that they would use the minimum amount of scaffolding and no hoarding, etc., and work around where the swifts were and not block the nest hole. So they got to do their job, finish the job, and the swifts got to stay. So that was a win-win for everyone. So here's a good example of an intervention. This is the museum building in Trinity College. A student there, recently found out that the museum building was getting a new roof and that a big scaffolding was going around the building. You can see here, there's a number of, a section of scaffolding left out, and that is to allow the existing swifts to return there. So once he alerted the authorities in Trinity to the fact that there was swifts there and that the scaffolding would affect the swifts' access, they managed to get the builders to build the scaffolding around. And you can see here with this video. You see, you blink and you miss it. They're very fast back in their nest. I'll play it again. But the swifts are happily returning to their nest. So that's really good to see. And those interventions are vital and they happen all the time, but it's necessary that local people are looking out for their swifts around the towns and villages in Ireland, because BirdWatch Ireland cannot be everywhere. Definitely not. It's just not possible. So I want to talk about some good case studies, best practice, and proactive approaches were used on buildings and to establish new nest colonies and also to retain swift nest colonies in various places. So I'm going to talk about where swift boxes were used first. So there's a whole myriad of different swift boxes, DIY ones, concrete ones, timber ones, woodcrete ones, all sorts of designs, shapes, and sizes. But it's not as complicated as it looks. So here's a nice example. BirdWatch Ireland Meath branch used the town hall, big sort of, I suppose the rear of the town hall opens out onto the town, and it's not very attractive, but what it is, it's very high, and it's got this nice overhang ledge, which is really good because it protects the swift nest boxes from the worst of the weather and the sun. It stops them getting really hot because the chicks can get overheated in the boxes. And it's also nice and high, so swifts have good clear access straight in and out of the boxes, because swifts go everywhere around 60 kilometers an hour, and they access the box at around that speed as well. So they need a clear entrance. They don't need wires, they don't need flagpoles or trees or anything else overhanging them. So they like that access. So you've got 3 triple cavity boxes. That basically means 3 little apartment blocks for swifts. So it's 9 nests in total. And you also see this little box here, which is a collar system. Excuse me. And the collar system is a lure, because this is a new site for swifts, so they're not aware that there's nest sites available for them. So to trick them into thinking there's some of their own kind there, and as Brian described, they like to be in a colony, so they like to be where other swifts are. They will be attracted down to this noise because they think there's other swifts there. They'll realize that these boxes are available, and they'll start doing their banging to see if anyone's inside. And when they realize they're unoccupied, they'll move in themselves. They'll get sort of they'll get more and more comfortable in the first season, and then in the second season they'll return back and they'll lay their eggs. They're rarely establish in a box and lay the same year, but that's just detail you don't need to know. But that's the process. This is GMIT in Castlebar. It was an old, I suppose what people would call a mental hospital at one stage, and it was then converted to a college campus, and it's the first, I suppose it's the flagship project of Swift Conservation Ireland. And you can just see up in the corner here, there was swifts in this building, up under the roof plate of all these buildings. Unfortunately, when they refurbed it, the swifts were lost. So Linda Huxley, who is the person behind Swift Conservation Ireland, who works in GMIT Castlebar, knew this, and these boxes put up to try get swifts back on campus. So you can see here there's 4 triple cavity nest boxes. There's all these wires all around as well. The swifts moved back in there, or swifts re-established in these boxes, and now there's a thriving swift colony at GMIT Castlebar again. And if you want to see those nests, there is, if you Google GMIT Swift live stream, you'll find the nests have all got cameras inside them, and you can see the adults return to the chicks. You can see them incubating the eggs. You can see the chicks doing their exercises. You can see all sorts of stuff. So that's a really nice thing and to have a look at if you're interested. So swift bricks. These are a really clever idea. These bricks are used when you're building the wall, if you're doing a new build or an extension or whatever, you can use these bricks. You build them into the fabric of the wall. They're permanent. They stay there. The Swifts access them. They don't require maintenance. They don't need anything, and it's safe and permanent. And we would always encourage Swift bricks when we put in submissions to planning applications and all that sort of stuff. They're a no-brainer. They're a really good idea. Here's Swift. Here's a triple cavity box being used as a Swift brick in the leisure centre in Castlebar, and you can see the finished job with the Swift access in the new hole there. And then below you can see how they just blend straight into the wall. They're not and that's why engineers and architects and stuff and builders like to use them as well, because they don't take the look off the building at all. This is the Crescent Arts Centre in Belfast. This is a celebrated project. The Crescent Arts Centre is a historic building, as you can see, and a number of years ago it needed a lot of renovation of the roof. There was Swifts in there, and the Northern Ireland Swift group, when they found out the building was going to be renovated, they stepped in to make sure the Swift colonies weren't lost. So they advised the builders and the architects on how to work around the Swifts, when best to do the work, and to do sort of, I suppose, the bare minimum required to redo the roof or whatever they needed to do, but to try retain the Swifts. So what they managed to do is do the roof repairs as required. Some of the original nests were lost, but they were replaced by Swift bricks, as you can see here, around here. So the colony roughly stayed around the same size, and those new boxes are now all occupied as far as I know. So that was really good. So they really, really were very careful to retain the Swift natural sites, but then they put in bricks to mitigate for any that may have been lost, which is best practice, definitely. Because it went so well, and it was a good news story, and it's an arts centre and it's a public space, they decided to put up an interpretive panel to tell the story of the Swifts in the roof and the project and all that sort of stuff. And they commissioned an artist to do a sculpture in the likeness of a Swift, I suppose, as a conservation or as a conversation starter, and again a celebration of the job. And the Hamilton Architects won a United Nations award for sort of sustainable architecture and design and all that sort of stuff off the back of the project. So it's really good for architects to be able to see their colleagues and their peers getting an award for doing this sort of stuff, and it encourages more stuff like it, which is really good. This is a project I really like. This is the Lions Mill in Sligo. I don't know if anyone knows the new Lidl in Sligo, on the Bundoran Road. This building is just to the right of that, and as part of the planning application for that Lidl at the time, the Sligo County Council stipulated that this building had to be retained and it had to be restored and looked after in that. So during the build of Lidl, they wrapped the building when they were doing some repairs, and Will Woodrow, who was the ecologist on the job, found Swifts banging against this hoarding, this wrapping on and realised then there was Swifts nesting in this building. So they got the job done as quick as they could, but then to allow the Swifts back into the building, to reoccupy the building, they were very careful to retain as many of the entrance points. You see one here. This is a natural Swift nest entrance here between the two bricks just at the very top of the wall plate. The wall plate is where the roof timbers meet the top of the wall. So you'll often get Swifts between the two timbers on top of the wall. That's what you call a roof plate. And they build this little nest cup, and that's where they have dregs. So you often see them dragging themselves up under the roof plate, up under the gutter to access the roof plate. That's most often where we find them. Then you see this one here on the right-hand side. This is called a half brick. You can get these in the UK, and they can even be made by with a mold. A builder would easily make them a concrete and a mold, and that's to just the access to allow them into the inner cavity of the wall. And in the inner cavity, the builders had left these nest cavities for them, a space for them to build their nest. So there's loads of those in the thing. There's also bat bricks, and I can tell you we did the Sligo Swift survey the year before last, and we can tell you that there's bats and Swifts using both, and even the Swifts actually occupy the bat bricks first, which is hilarious. So here's Will Woodrow and Micheál Casey, who's a local Swift champion. He's established his own colonies at his own home and done lots of nest box projects around the county, and you can see the finish of the building here. It's really quite modern and nice, but yet it's full of swifts and bats, which is really nice to see. So everyone got what they wanted, so it's another good news story. Here's one I really like, done by volunteers. We did the Wicklow Swift Survey a couple of years ago, and a guy called Brian O'Reilly got really interested, and he established swift nest boxes at his own house, and he just couldn't get enough of swifts. So when the local convent was getting converted to a primary care centre, he asked the builders would they, I suppose, humor him and allow him to put up swift nest boxes in the bell tower of the old convent. And they agreed, and they've allowed him to do so. And what he's come up with is, these are the lattice windows in the bell tower, and he's built bespoke swift nest boxes behind each one. So you see 4 here, 2 there, another 4, another 4. And he's got the swift nest cup here to help them along, because swifts have to build their nest. They don't land, like Brian said, so they build their nest with stuff they find on the wing. So a little bit of cobweb, bits of feathers, bits of spider's web, whatever. So it can take them a very long time to build up anything that resembles a bird's nest. So Brian's got them started by lining some nest cups here for them, which is really good. And then he's just put mesh around the bits so they don't sort of come in the wrong parts and get stuck in the bell tower. So he's been very careful. He's thought it all through. And because it's new sites, Swiss haven't nested here before, he's put in a collar system as well. Sealed them all up. There's the wire for the speaker for the collar system. It's here on this box here. And that's going now, and hopefully it will attract swifts in the very near future, if not already. I want to play this video of Carrick-on-Shannon, the art centre in Carrick-on-Shannon, of what a thriving sort of a swift colony looks like, and some bangers as well, so you can see what Brian was talking about. So you've seen there, so there's a load of swifts nests up between these roof timbers on that roof plate, as I described it. So they're open eaves, so they can squeeze up there and get in and build nests. And there's also some single nest boxes up there. I wouldn't have chose to put them there, just in case they blocked the natural nest sites, but they're there anyway, and I think 1 or 2 of them are occupied. But you see what those birds did. They went up here. There's obviously a cavity here, and they reckon it's empty because the 2 bangers, it could be the same bird, go up and check it out twice. I'll play that again. You hear that screaming call, that's distinctive of the swift. And if you learn that call, you'll start to see way more swifts in the town or the village you're from, if they're there. It's a really good way to pick up swifts, because screaming swifts flying around at sort of roof level in a town or near a building is a really, really strong indication that they're nesting in that building or very close by. So putting swifts on the map, to sort of go away from conservation stuff for a minute. So a big focus of what we do is trying to map exactly where all the colonies are, as many colonies as we can. And we've done, as of this year, we'll have done 14 of the counties in 5 years. So we've done a lot. We've also integrated data from Swift Conservation Ireland, from Wild Kildare, from West Waterford Eco Group, from all sorts, anywhere we can get our hands on data to try get the swift colonies marked so we can protect them. Because if someone rings us up and goes, is there swifts in this building, and we don't know, we can't do anything about it. And it's very tricky, and those colonies get lost overnight very quickly. So if you're interested in having a look for swifts in your area, or if you know there's swifts in your area and you want to help us out, there's just some tips here about surveying swifts, and I'll just fly through it. Look for swifts from mid-May until the end of August. So they normally arrive back the first week of May, but there's not that many in the country straight away. So you can leave it until mid-May, really, or a little bit afterwards before you start looking for them. If it's been a cold spring, they're often quite delayed. The numbers of them are quite delayed. So You could even leave it until the start of June. Survey during the key activity windows. They're insectivorous, so they're not interested in sort of flying around wasting energy when there's no insects around. So they're not, you won't see lots of them at sort of 5 and 6 in the morning, like, you know, other birds up singing on the dawn chorus and all that sort of stuff. Between 9 and 12 is a nice window. Swifts stay close to their nest sites to get the first feed of the day before they head off in the middle of the day. You don't, Swifts go somewhere in the middle of the day. I don't know where they go, but they're not usually around their nests. The best time to see swifts and nail them down near nest sites is between 7 p.m. and dark. They get really, really active close to their nest sites. They stay close whilst they're feeding, and they return more frequently to the nest site before they go to roost for the night or go to incubate or whatever they might be doing. So that really is the key time. If you're getting frustrated not seeing swifts in your town, but you know they're there, go out between 7 and dark, you'll see swifts. Survey only in calm, warm weather. If it's cold or blowing a hoolie, you won't see swifts. Just forget about it. Go home. Listen for the screaming call. I'll play that for you now. It's so distinctive, and once you get that into your head, you'll start hearing and seeing a lot more swifts. It sounds a bit crazy in isolation, but in the normal soundscape of a town with cars coming and going and people milling about, it almost blends in completely. Can identify suitable buildings. So nice old buildings are often where you'll find them, but not always. It can be modern buildings where maybe a vent is missing or there's some strange architectural quirk that allows them in. That can happen. Take a photo and email it to us if you think there's swifts in a building. It can be, we can almost tell a swifty looking building straight away from a photo. It can't help. Sorry, keep a photo, keep a record of the date and time. That's quite helpful. And then just email swifts at BirdWatch Ireland if you're not sure, and we might be able to give you a steer. So the Biodiversity Ireland, or the National Biodiversity Data Centre, has a special portal for entering swift sightings and nest sites. And if you go there, enter your records, and you hit the swift button here, you can even put in as general birds as well. But there's a specific swift portal here, and they share all that data with BirdWatch Ireland once every 2 weeks, and we have a look at it to see what new ones have come up, and we use it to help us with our county swift surveys as well. And that's just a form there. It's fairly standard. It's name, email address. You can hit the map exactly to point exactly where you found it, seen the swifts, etc. And it just prompts you what information it needs. So that'd be really helpful. So just to say, finishing up now, we've got that Saving Swifts guide. It's online. You can download it online. BirdWatch Ireland, if you just Google Saving Swifts, BirdWatch Ireland, you'll find it. And free PDF is all over the place. We've got our Swift survey section on the website, lots of useful stuff. There's some reports there, all county reports uploaded. You can see the level of detail we go in and the sort of recommendations we make to the local authority and stuff as well. So I'll just play this video quickly. It's last see Brian in action in Banagher, one of the best swift towns there is in Ireland.
Swifts are amazing birds. Great in style for just 3 short months each summer. They nest in buildings in our towns and cities, but have also found homes in some of Ireland's most historic sites, such as Clonmacnoise. Here, the incredible aerial displays and nest sites in the monastic buildings makes them an integral part of the heritage of the area. So swifts are a really fascinating little species. They come to Ireland for just a short period each summer, May, June and July, to breed every year. They're very much a bird that lives life in the air. They feed in the air, they drink in the air, and they even sleep in the air. So although the swift can be mixed up with a few other species, there are a few ways that you can tell them apart from the likes of swallows and martins. So the swift is a bit bigger than the swallow or the martin. It's got very angular wings. It flies with great speed. And one of the ways to tell them apart is the call that it makes. Quite often you see them or hear them up and down the main streets of our towns making this really iconic and telltale screech as they fly up and down the main street. And the other way that you can tell the swift apart is by their nest. So they nest in under the eaves generally of houses, but you'll never see the nest. Whereas with the swallow, you'll often see the cup-shaped nest in the barn. With the house martin, you see that dome nest in the apex of the house. With the swift, they just disappear in under the eaves of the house and you don't actually see the nest. So today we're in Banagher, County Offaly, which is one of the best towns in the Midlands for swifts. However, the numbers are in decline. The latest bird atlas has shown us that their numbers have declined by about 25% in the past 40 years. So they're species that really need our help. In order to help them, one of the first things we need to know is where they're nesting. Swifts mainly nest in urban areas, in buildings, in offices, in homes, and many nest sites in these places have been lost.
Information coming up there, so I'll just move on. So that's it. Thanks very much. I think Andrew's going to come back in there, and myself and Brian will take questions from everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Ricky. Absolutely fantastic project. Yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking, the pressure the swifts are under, the amount of factors just compounding on them. But just amazing work with the project and the inventiveness of some of those nest sites. Working with the architects is just brilliant, and they look, the small little holes in the building, it just looks fantastic. Yeah, and the range of sites as well, like even the swifts themselves, some of the places they choose from Clonmacnoise and so forth, they're just...
It's mad, really, and it's amazing, and it's, I mean, to be fair to Swift and others, she did years and literally planning application by planning application, going in there and just suggesting that they put in Swift bricks into the buildings, and normally 9 times out of 10 to say yes. So it's just a matter of putting in the time and asking for these things, and it's good. But hopefully all of this will be old hat in 10 years. I mean, people are picking up on it really fast, but we don't really have much time. I mean, it's swifts now, it's 57% decline. Like, that's massive. So it's really important that we try arrest the declines and then and keep the colonies stable and then try grow them from there. But luckily we still have strong populations in certain towns. But what we are seeing is actually this year is quite it's like day and night in West Waterford, where West Waterford Eco Group have been surveying towns like Ardmore, Dungarvan, Clashmore. There's a really good healthy swift populations in that part of the county, but in the east, in Waterford City, in Tramore, there's only barely a handful. So somehow, probably over the last 20 years, those populations locally have been dropping off, and they become locally extinct. And before you know it, bigger parts of the county and then the country are sort of devoid of swifts, and it's very hard to attract them back then. So it's really important, I suppose, although a lot of people are putting their sort of shoulder to the wheel, it's important now that individuals and communities get involved where they are. And because, as I say, the National Parks and Wildlife, Swift Conservation Ireland, BirdWatch Ireland cannot be everywhere. Really, you're depending on local people to take ownership and pride in their own swift colonies and look after them and try prevent them disappearing and hopefully grow them, which is good.
And as far as the nest sites go, it seems like a lot of them are just lost due to ignorance, or people just not even knowing there's nests there.
You don't even know they're so sneaky. Like, what people won't realize is they're notoriously hard to survey, because if you ever watch a wren or a robin or a blackbird or whatever in your garden, they're over and back with a sort of a mouthful of insects or worms every couple of seconds to the nest. With swifts, they build up this bolus. Actually, I don't think Brian had a slide on it. This ball of food, it's called a bolus. It can be up to about 1,000 insects in a bolus, and they come back every maybe 4, 5, 6 hours to the nest, and dump this bolus on the chicks. They can feed on that and survive. So if you don't know where the nest is, like, or you're expecting the adult to be in and out every couple of minutes, you're not going to see that. So you might think they're there at all. And the other thing is, you've seen that footage at Trinity. They fly in at 60 miles an hour. If you blink, you'll miss it. So even if you're watching, if you look like we're surveying, if you check the time on your phone or you get a text or whatever, you'll miss it. And that could be your one opportunity all day to spot them returning to the nest. An awful lot of the time, not through ignorance, but just through not knowing. These people, people are trying to just put on new fascia or soffit or clean up the house or whatever, and they inadvertently box out the swifts. Happens all the time.
And just the law around that, so it's illegal to tamper with birds' nests.
If you know they're there. Yeah, so for example, if that church in Donegal, for example, they did nothing illegal there because they never checked. So technically being ignorant of them is actually a defense. But if we went up there and said, here's our reporters, 15 swift nest sites active in this building, cease what you're doing, they'd have to hopefully comply. Hopefully the National Parks and Wildlife would back you up, because it would be illegal what they're doing, to carry on any works that would affect the nests. But 9 times out of 10, and we always try to use carrot rather than the stick approach. I have never been in a sort of Mexican standoff like that ever. So most people fully buy into what you're trying to do, because 9 times out of 10, they don't have to stop what they're doing. They just have to work around it. Swifts they're easy enough to work around in most cases.
Okay, excellent. I'll get to some questions from tonight. So Kyle had a good one. Where did swifts build their nests pre-humans, and are any swifts still found using natural nest sites, and what would they be?
Yes, they do. They nested in holes in trees and in cliff crags and sea cliffs and stuff. And there's still crag nesting swifts in Ireland. There's a colony near East in Sligo. There's also a colony up in Bulben that we know of in Sligo. And there's a couple in quarries, in limestone quarries in the north that are known, but there's no tree nesting swifts known in Ireland. The nearest colony is in Scotland of tree nesting swifts. And on the continent, in Poland, in the Czech, places like that, they'll nest in normal looking nest boxes with a round hole and on a pole in the middle of a garden. They've never evolved sort of fully, or not evolved, but they've not needed to evolve to nest in buildings in that part of the world.
Is there some in the Cliffs of Moher?
No, I don't. Well, not that I know of.
Yeah. Okay. How long does it take them to migrate, and what do we know about their behavior in Africa over winter? That's from Kate.
Yeah, not a huge amount. It's quicker on the way home than they are on the way up. It takes them about 10 or 12 days to get up, and about a week to get back, I think. That's something to do with the weather and the winds and all that sort of thing. What they did in Africa, we know they follow the rains around Africa, because after these monsoons and those seasonal rains, there's a profusion of insects. So as Brian said, they don't land. Once they leave the nest site, they're gone back. They're hanging around like the Congo Basin, where these rains happen all the time in that season. After those rains, there's tons of insects all around the place, and they basically stay in good condition until that sort of a biological switch goes off, telling them to head again north to Europe to breed.
Okay, here's one you might know. What makes them fly so fast? How do they fly so fast?
Well, it's their design. So there's a couple of things there. Their body is that cigar shape. It's like a missile. It's made for speed. You've got those sickle-shaped wings, the short forked tail. They just have everything about them is made for speed. So I mean, they design aircraft based off the sort of shape and design of birds like swifts.
Okay, and if you find an injured swift, what's the best thing to do?
The best thing to do is to get in touch with an expert, swift or bird rehab person, and there is the wildlife, WRI, Wildlife Rehab Ireland, have a very good website with local rehab contacts for wildlife. They're the best, and they have an emergency number. But BirdWatch Ireland don't get involved in bird or wildlife sort of rescue stuff. So we always pass it on to those who know better than us.
Okay. A few kind of nest boxy ones. So Rory wants to know, how do you stop sparrows taking over the box? So he put up a nest box last year, but sparrows moved in immediately.
Yeah, so that does happen. So there's good news and bad news there. Sparrows will nest very early in the season, March, April, May. Swifts don't arrive back till May. They won't be looking for nest sites until later. It's not actually the established adult swifts that are looking for nests. It's the teenagers, it's the bangers, the ones that haven't established somewhere else. So they arrive a bit later, sort of in early June, the first wave of those. So by then, the sparrows have probably finished anyway. And actually, in some cases, been shown that sparrows attract swifts' nests. And actually, swifts can oust a sparrow from a box as well. There's no problem there. So you have two options. You can stuff if it's easy for them to get to, because some people might be elderly, or they mightn't have access to a ladder, or they mightn't fancy climbing a ladder, or their box might be in an awkward situation. But what you can do is what that man Jim Callahan did in the north, and he does little doors on his boxes which he blocked off until the swifts arrive back. With my boxes here, which I've never had swifts in, I just can't attract them here. I stuffed them with a bit of sponge, so the sparrows and starlings and other things can't get in. And on about 15th of May, I take that out, and hopefully, but actually I have had sparrows in one of those. It's just one of those things. Most of the boxes should be designed with a 29 millimeter high oval entrance. That's to stop starlings getting in. But unfortunately, if you go any smaller than that, the swifts won't be able to get in. But house sparrows can still get in. So there's no whole pile you can do. Only try reduce the chances. So it's one of those things.
I'm not sure where Maria is, but she put up 2 triple boxes at the end of June. And so there's already 2 boxes. Young birds have been checked, young swifts have already checked them out. So when would they wouldn't be occupying them yet, would they? And she wants to know, is there any danger the calling system will put them off?
No way. So without a caller system, you're almost, if it's a new novel site to swifts that they don't know about, and you've no caller system, it could be years, if they ever find it. And caller system can be your phone hanging outside the window for 20 minutes on a Sunday morning, to a full-on speaker with an amplifier inside on a timer. That's what most people use. You can get sort of the bits and pieces on Amazon for less than 100 quid, way less than that even. So no, I know, like up in the RSPB headquarters in Northern Ireland, it took them 6 or 7 years to get swifts to their boxes. And I know people have put them up and the next day had swifts checking them out. So it's sort of the luck of the game. I've had mine here 4 years now. I've never had a swift near it. All bells, all whistles.
Okay, yeah, she's in Kildare.
Yeah, very good population in Kildare. They also say that swifts look for sort of nest sites similar to what they fledged from. I've never I don't know, I'm not the expert on that, but so it could be Kildare has an awful lot of boxes owed to the work of the branch and Wild Kildare and others, and it could be that she's getting offspring from those nest box projects that are now looking for their own sites, and they know what they're looking for, and they're looking for boxes. Yeah,
I mean, that's a great sign anyway, that there's already been birds checking them out. And if birds do go in, just keep adding more boxes beside them and grow the colony.
Yeah. And that's why we always say if you're doing an S box project, to use 2 triple cavities, so that allows you some space for expansion. Because if you put up a single box and it gets occupied, you're back up the ladder next year again to add another box and another box and another box. So if you plan in a bit of expansion, if you can afford it or you've got the space, do like.
And if someone wants to get a box, do we sell them in the BirdWatch shop? Is that right? Or you can?
We don't this second, but we will have them back in the autumn. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can build your own box.
Yeah, and that plans. There is a plan for the design called Zeist, which is a proven design. The only thing with timber is because swifts are site faithful, they need to return a year on year on year. And Brian described how they will only go to the exact same spot. So if you've got timber up in an exposed position and it gets weathered and it starts falling apart and then you take it down, you don't replace it exactly where the swift is expecting it, it can cause problems. So what we say is if you're using a timber box, make sure it's well maintained or it's up under a good eave where it's got protection from the worst of the weather, and that'll last a lot longer then.
And what about the orientation of the boxes? Is that crucial, or would you get away?
Yeah, so west and north are recommended because it's not getting the full blast of the sun, because boxes and chicks can overheat. Now that advice is largely coming from the continent where they get much higher temperatures. But the way things are going here, and like with the heat wave this week, it would not be strange for a nest box to get overheated. Like we do know swallows can overheat in the nests in uncorrugated roofs and stuff. But I would say you could site them south or even east facing if they've got good shelter from the sun with an overhang or some other shading.
Okay. Andrew wants to know, do young birds inherit nest sites from parents? And you might just say how long lived they are as well. Yeah,
so like about sort of 7 or 8 years is average, but it can live much longer than that. Sort of, I know like there's been pairs well documented have 11 or 12 breeding seasons together.
Yeah, and do they inherit sites from the parents?
Sorry, yeah, so only if the parents pass on or don't come back, they could. Yeah, okay. But they don't I don't think there's a tradition of them being passed on. No, because their parents need them. So those juveniles have to go off and find their own spots. Certainly, they would try stay nearby if there was that space in that colony or whatever. But that's what those bangers are doing.
And Kyle has a question about genetic diversity. So they're loyal to nest sites. So where does the coupling up happen? And will they meet up in Africa and head off?
No, I think they meet up at the close to the colony in wherever they're breeding. Yeah, because they arrive back on their own often. So I think the pair establishment is happening at the nest location or close to it. So yeah.
Okay, and just a few questions on them.
Yeah, there's one in chat I wanted to make sure because I said I would.
Yeah, just a few questions about specific areas in Ireland. So there's one question about Ballina, County Mayo, but I think you mentioned the building in Castlebar already. So
yeah,
lots flying over the River Moy. And has there been a survey there, or is that?
Yeah, so there is, and if they go to the Swift Conservation Ireland website, if they just Google that, there's a section called Information by County, and if they select Mayo, they'll see a list of towns, and Linda has definitely surveyed Ballina. They'll see the colonies there.
And Cavan?
Cavan, I don't think there's been a systematic survey, no.
And yeah, Andrew Kelly was wondering about, so he wants to put up nest boxes. He's in Louth. So has there been a survey being done there? Would you recommend putting up a nest box?
There's interest in doing one in Louth. We hope to get to it hopefully next year, maybe. And so absolutely, Swift will establish at a new site that they've never nested before. But you're going to need to play lures to try attract birds that are flying past or flying around locally. They won't sort of know to go to your house or go to your school or wherever you're putting up these nest boxes. But they will definitely set up in new novel sites. But there's no guarantee when. Like I said, I've been trying here for 4 or 5 years. I'm supposed to be the Swift expert. I can't get them here, but I've advised so many people what to do, and they've got them sort of within weeks or the following season or whatever. So there's just some weird magic to it. I don't know.
Great. If people are interested in promoting Swift projects locally, we're happy to get the word out there. Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah. And so I suppose we don't tend to share. We if there's local stuff, we normally share all that through our local branches, but we just don't. If we were to share sort of every project for every bird related thing, I suppose our Facebook and our Twitter will be coming down with that stuff. So I think the policies we just don't on as standard. I'm not sure, it could be wrong there, but I haven't seen that.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we've covered all the burning questions for this evening. I think the key is, keep a fantastic bird, keep your eyes peeled. It's particularly looking for colonies and old buildings with swifts in them, or new buildings. The more nests, the better. And we'd love to hear about any sightings of swifts, and protecting the colonies that are already there is the key thing, isn't it? As well as getting the new nest boxes up. But if we don't protect what's there, then it'll slowly be eroded away. So I just want to say, thanks a million, Ricky and Brian, for giving that talk tonight. Fantastic project, and all the amount of work and effort gone into that, and fantastic, worthy project. I just want to give another plug for BirdWatch Ireland. If you're a member, thank you, and if you're not a member, please consider joining. Go to birdwatchireland.ie for more information on that. You can find more information, or go to our website for more information on Swifts as well, Birds Connect. And our next webinar is going to be in Heritage Week, and that's Tara doing the birds of Dalkey Island, which I think should be a nice, interesting project as well. It's a great spot. So thanks a million, Ricky. Thanks a million, Brian.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.